They don't like you, and that's fine. You don't need to win their approval. You need to win control over yourself. In this video, I'll show you how to speak with calm authority, protect your dignity, and turn hostile conversations into moments of clarity and respect that no one can twist. Control your tone, not their opinion. This is one of the hardest truths to accept in communication because deep down we all want to be liked. We want people to approve of us, validate us, and feel comfortable in our presence. When we meet someone who doesn't like us, our natural instinct is to either defend ourselves, prove them wrong, or retreat entirely. But that instinct often backfires. When you make their opinion your mission, you lose control of the only thing you actually have power over: your own tone, your own delivery, your own behavior. Think about it this way. You are never truly in charge of how another person feels about you. Their opinion of you is shaped by their past, their values, their biases, their mood in that moment, and maybe even things that have absolutely nothing to do with you. If you walk into a conversation determined to make them like you, you're placing your self-worth into a box that they hold the key to. That's exhausting. And worse, it gives them silent power over you. What you do control is your own tone. Your tone is the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you respond under pressure. It's the subtle signal you send that says, I know who I am and I don't need your approval to speak with respect. Tone is not just about voice pitch or volume. It's about the entire energy you bring to the interaction. A calm, steady tone tells the other person that you're grounded. It communicates that you are here to have a conversation, not a confrontation. It lowers the emotional temperature in the room, which in turn gives you a better chance of navigating the conversation productively. When your tone is calm, you prevent the situation from escalating, even if their words are sharp. Here's the challenge. When someone doesn't like us, we often match their energy. If they're cold, we become colder. If they're sarcastic, we become defensive. If they're dismissive, we raise our voice to force acknowledgement. And before we know it, the conversation isn't about the topic anymore. It's about trading emotional punches. This is where controlling your tone becomes your secret weapon. When you choose not to mirror their negativity, you disrupt the cycle. They expect friction, you offer steadiness. They expect combat, you offer composure. That's disarming in a way that is far more effective than trying to charm them into liking you. Controlling your tone also protects your image in front of others. Remember, you're not just communicating with one person, you're often communicating in front of an audience, whether it's co-workers in a meeting, family members in a gathering, or strangers who happen to overhear. If you lose your cool, those watching will remember how you reacted more than what the other person said to provoke you. Your tone becomes your reputation in that moment. One of the most powerful ways to control your tone is to pause before responding. That brief silence might feel uncomfortable, but it creates space for you to choose your words rather than react impulsively. In that pause, you can lower your voice, slow your speech, and deliberately steer the conversation toward clarity. For example, if someone says, I don't think you're qualified to handle this, instead of snapping back, you can calmly say, I hear your concern. Can you tell me specifically what you think is missing? Your tone is neutral, your words are clear, and you've just shifted the conversation from personal attack to factual discussion. There's also an element of self-respect in controlling your tone. You're showing yourself that you are capable of maintaining composure, even in the face of negativity. That builds confidence over time. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. At first, it may feel like you're holding back or even being passive. But in reality, you're demonstrating the kind of control that most people can't manage when emotions run high. Another important aspect is separating the person from the problem. If you go into the conversation thinking, they don't like me, so everything they say is an attack, you're already defensive. But if you frame it as, this is a problem to address, and I will address it with respect regardless of how they feel about me, your tone will reflect focus rather than resentment. It keeps the conversation professional and solutions-oriented. Of course, controlling your tone does not mean suppressing your feelings. You can still express yourself honestly and firmly without raising your voice or using sharp words. Firmness in tone communicates strength without aggression. For example, you can say, I understand you feel strongly about this, but I need you to know that I have a different perspective, in a steady tone that makes your stance clear without inviting hostility. The key is to remember that your tone either fuels the fire or puts it out. Even if the other person walks away still disliking you, they will remember how you handled the exchange. And sometimes, people who don't like you may start to soften their stance, not because you convinced them with arguments, but because you consistently modeled calm, respectful communication. It's also worth noting that controlling your tone is not about being fake. You don't have to plaster on a smile or pretend everything is fine. You can acknowledge tension without inflaming it. Saying, I can see this topic is sensitive for both of us, so let's keep this constructive, shows awareness while setting a standard for the conversation. Practice is essential. You won't magically have perfect tone control in your first few difficult conversations. You will feel your heart rate increase, your voice want to rise, and your body tense up. But each time you consciously choose to maintain control, you strengthen that skill. Over time, it becomes a part of how you naturally interact. Here's a mindset shift that helps see. Think of controlling your tone as playing the long game. In the short term, you might not win them over. You might even walk away feeling like nothing changed. But in the long term, people notice consistency. They notice that you don't let others rattle you. They notice that you treat even those who dislike you with a certain level of respect, and that over time can shift relationships in ways you didn't expect. When you master your tone, you communicate self-control, maturity, and confidence. Those are qualities that make people take you seriously whether they personally like you or not. You become the steady voice in the room when others are losing theirs. You become the example of how to disagree without disrespect. And you send a clear, silent message. You can dislike me if you choose, but you will never make me lose my composure. Focus on clarity, not victory. Too often when we find ourselves talking to someone who doesn't like us, we treat the conversation as a competition. Every sentence becomes a point to be scored, every reply an attempt to win the exchange. This turns the interaction into a battle instead of a bridge, and when you're focused on winning, you stop listening. You become so wrapped up in crafting your next counterpoint that you miss the opportunity to actually understand the other person. Clarity is different. Clarity means your goal is to make sure both people understand each other, regardless of whether you agree. It's about ensuring that what you say is received as you intended and that you have correctly understood what they meant. When you focus on clarity, you prioritize the exchange of information over the exchange of blows. You're not trying to prove yourself superior, you're trying to make sure nothing is lost in misunderstanding. When someone doesn't like you, it's easy for them to assume the worst in your words. A neutral statement can be interpreted as an insult. A simple question can be seen as a challenge. That's why clarity becomes your shield. It reduces the chance for your words to be twisted, whether intentionally or not. Instead of vague statements, you give specifics. Instead of emotionally charged phrases, you use plain, direct language. This approach forces both sides to focus on the content rather than the conflict. Clarity also means asking for confirmation. When they say something that could be interpreted multiple ways, you don't guess their meaning, you ask, "When you say X, do you mean? Or can you clarify what you meant by that?" It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of discipline. It shows that you are more interested in getting it right than in assuming. This can subtly disarm the other person because they expect resistance, not curiosity. Another part of focusing on clarity is stripping away unnecessary emotion from your delivery. This doesn't mean speaking like a robot, but it does mean avoiding sarcasm, loaded words, or passive-aggressive comments. Those things might feel satisfying in the moment, but they muddy your message. They turn the conversation into a personality clash rather than a problem-solving effort. By keeping your language clean and your tone steady, you make it harder for them to justify reacting defensively. You also want to clarify your intentions early in the conversation. If you're there to resolve a misunderstanding, say so. If you want to set boundaries, state them directly. People who don't like you will often look for hidden agendas, so being upfront helps to neutralize suspicion. For example, "I want to make sure we're on the same page about this project" is clearer and calmer than "I don't think you understand what I'm saying." One invites collaboration, the other invites resistance. Focusing on clarity also keeps you from over-talking. When emotions run high, we tend to repeat ourselves, add extra details, and pile on justifications. This creates confusion and gives the other person more material to argue with. Instead, keep your statements short and targeted. Say what you need to say, then stop. Give space for them to respond and listen carefully to what they say in return. Clarity often comes more from what you choose to leave out than from what you add. Listening plays a huge role here as well. If you only listen for points you can counter, you're playing to win. If you listen to understand, you're playing for clarity. That means you might have to reflect their points back to them. So what I'm hearing is that you're concerned about X. This doesn't mean you agree. It means you understand. People are far more willing to hear you out when they feel they've been heard themselves. When you focus on clarity instead of victory, the entire tone of the interaction shifts. You no longer need to dominate the conversation to feel like you've succeeded. Success becomes defined by whether both parties leave with an accurate understanding of each other's positions, even if they remain in disagreement. This is powerful because it preserves dignity on both sides. You're not humiliating them into submission, and you're not compromising your own stance. You're simply ensuring the conversation is productive rather than destructive. Clarity is the long-term strategy. Victory might give you a momentary sense of satisfaction, but it rarely changes relationships for the better. Clarity builds trust even in small doses, and over time that trust can soften hostility. And if it doesn't, at least you'll know that you communicated in a way that was impossible to misinterpret, which protects both your integrity and your message.